And welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I'm your host, Demo, and this is Brewing with Underwhelming Commanders, the inaugural episode. So for all of you that watched my Why Would You Ever Play an Underwhelming Commander video, right? That was sort of the intro to this series. So maybe go check out that video if you haven't, just so you sort of have an understanding of what's going on here. So I had a poll, I actually closed it down after only a few days, just because I realized, hey, I actually need quite a bit of preparation time in order to do this, right? I'm sort of building 5 decks. I actually am really blown away by the support that I've got from the video. Overall, it's been overwhelmingly positive. As I said to my patrons, I was actually a little worried. I had that video prepared a while ago and was sort of waiting for the right moment to post it because I didn't want to scare anyone away and be that sort of elitist person who's like, how dare you play with a Muldrotha? I mean, people can do whatever they like. You can play with it whatever commander you want. I just think that what is more needed in the format is a little more diversity and opportunity maybe for these lesser known and underwhelming commanders to get a little bit of attention. So that's what this series is all about. So starting out this time with Evra, Halcyon Witness, had the 5th highest amount of votes with 124. There was over 1,000 people who voted overall. So Evra has this very unique ability, right? It's 6 mana 4/4 with lifelink, and it has this ability where you pay for exchange your life total with Evra, Halcyon Witness's power. So what's going to happen here is you're going to, just for argument's sake, let's say your life's at 40, you're going to swap your life total with Evra's power. So your life total becomes 4 and Evra's power becomes 40. So Evra is a 44, which is pretty fantastic. And then obviously if you can connect with it, I mean, it doesn't have any of evasion of any kind. And you can put a lot of the typical Voltron-y stuff in here. I'm really not going to cover any of the Voltron stuff. Again, the Voltron strategy has been covered and talked about so much that it doesn't really need to be talked about again. Though Power Matrix, I've been putting that card in a lot of decks. It really is good. It gives your commander evasion, right? It gives your commander flying and trample. Those are the most important ones, I think, because it gives them evasion so you can get through for damage. So I think that goes in this deck for sure. We obviously got to protect our commander, right? Selfless Spirit, Flawless Maneuver. We want stuff that we can immediately use, right? So that Selfless Spirit's going to be in play already, and then we play our commander, and if someone tries to kill it before we can use it, we sack in response, or we Flawless Maneuver, which will be free, right? I always love Rebuff the Wicked. That's always got to go in any deck where you're protecting your commander in white. And Bastion Protector is another one, which is fantastic. Again, just like with Selfless Spirit, I always say this about Steely Resolve and why I love Steely Resolve so much, because it's already in play. So after you cast your commander, there's no window there for your opponent to remove it. Bastion Protector, similar, right? It's going to come down and immediately your commander has indestructible, so you don't have to worry as much. I mean, they can still exile it, but you don't have to worry as much about it getting removed. That's such a powerful ability of making your life total 4 and Evra's power 40. Let's try to figure out another way to use this other than I just one-shot my opponents, right? So I thought Axis of Morality was absolutely perfect in this deck. 6 mana enchantment at the beginning of your upkeep, you may have 2 target players exchange life totals. So you swap with your Evra and now your life total's 4, and then at the beginning of your upkeep, you have 2 target players exchange life totals. So now we're doing some more exchanging here, and you're going to swap life totals with your opponent, and they're going to have a life total of 4. That seems pretty darn good, right? So, and we can do this every turn. Soul Conduit is another way we can do this. This one's going to cost 6 mana, but remember, Evra's ability, you're not going to have to do that all the time. This is a permanent exchange. Exchange your life total with Evra, Halcyon Witness's power. It stays that way. Your life total stays that way. This is not a until end of turn effect, right? So if your life total is still really low, you can then use this to make your opponent's life total 4 or whatever. Children of Corliss is another one. This is fantastic because the exchanging life is a life loss. So you can, again, sack that and immediately gain back the life you just lost. I like Resplendent Angel and Angelic Accord. We're going to be gaining life, so we do need, some life gain trigger stuff is going to be good. We're going to be attacking all the time. I've said this a lot recently. We're going to be attacking constantly, and people are going to want to be hitting us because we're hitting them. So we need to be able to save ourselves, and making angel tokens at the beginning of our end step is going to be fantastic because it's going to save us a blocker, right? Obviously, the auto include life gain stuff, right? Rock's Faith Mender is now going to gain us 80 life or something ridiculous, right? Cradle of Vitality is going to be fantastic because, it's that much life, right? That's the important part there is we're gaining 40 life. So we want to take advantage of the fact that we're getting that much life so we can pay 2 mana and put a ton of counters on our Evra or another creature. Well of Lost Dreams. Obviously, we're going to want some card draw in here. And again, this can be draw 40 cards if we have enough mana open. You know, basically it's draw as many cards as you have mana open. But I wanted to do some other interesting stuff in the deck. I thought Brightmare, when Brightmare enters the battlefield, tap up to one target creature, you gain life equal to that creature's power. So we can attack with our Evra, and then Brightmare can come into play and tap our Evra, which is already tapped, and we're going to gain 40 life because our Evra has a 40 power. Dazzling Reflection, same thing, 2 mana instant, you gain life equal to target creature's power. So we're just going to gain, this is 2 mana, gain 40 life, you know, or 60 or whatever it is. The next time that creature would deal damage this turn, prevent that damage. That's not going to matter because we already attacked, or we can do this on our opponent's turn, right? So that part doesn't matter, even though we actually could use this on our opponent's creatures as well if we wanted to. So I like the versatility there. Pharrell's Mantle, this is a real spicy one. Again, I wanted to take advantage of the fact that our commander is going to have a giant power, right? 2 in a white aura. When enchanted creature attacks and isn't blocked, its controller may have it deal damage equal to its power +2 to target creature. If that player does, the attacking creature deals no combat damage this turn. So your Evra is not going to deal combat damage. However, this is a great way to get a creature off the board. And also, it's the creature dealing the damage, right? Its controller may have it deal damage equal to its power +2. So it's going to deal, if it's got a 40 power, it's going to deal 42 damage to some creature on the board. And also, because it has lifelink, you're going to gain all that life back. So you may not always want to do this. It's a may, right? You can do it if you want. You can actually do some wheeling and dealing, right, with your opponents here, where you tell the guy, hey, I'm going to attack you with my Evra. Don't worry, I'm not going to kill you. I'm going to kill that troublesome Vorinclex that's on the board. I'm going to get rid of that. And they'll be like, okay, sure, because it's not going to deal them any combat damage. So they're fine, right? So I think that's a fantastic include in the deck. Wall of Reverence obviously is going to be great. Again, we want to gain that life back. That's kind of important. So at the beginning of our end step, we gain back, you know, whatever our Evra's power is, we gain all that life back. Soul's Grace, 2 mana instant. You gain life equal to target creature's power. That's it. This is just 2 mana, I gain 40 life. So a lot of effects like that. I also thought, why don't we take advantage of the fact that we have a low life? Because we briefly will, right? For a brief moment, probably, we're going to have 4 life. So I thought, why not Fateful Hour? So Thraben Doomsayer and Gather the Townsfolk. Thraben Doomsayer is going to, we can make a token. That's good. Gives all our creatures +2/+2. That's pretty fantastic. Gather the Townsfolk, just make 5 human tokens for 2 mana. Seems pretty good, right? So again, just another way we can take advantage of the fact that our life total might be low. And then Sure Strike Trident. I mean, this one's fantastic in the deck. So it's a 2 mana equipment that equips for 4. An equipped creature has First Strike. That's pretty good. Our commander is going to have a giant power and a small toughness, so First Strike is always good for that. But you tap the creature and unattach Sure Strike Trident. This creature deals damage equal to its power to target player. We don't even need to attack now. If we have this in play, we can just sit there. You know, we save our commander as a blocker. It's going to be a fantastic blocker with First Strike. And then on the end step, we tap it, remove this, kill an opponent, re-equip it, and repeat, right? So that's an auto include in the deck. Really interesting, a lot more interesting than I thought it would be. I thought it would be kind of boring, but because of the manipulating of life totals and stuff, there is a lot of different directions you can go. But moving on to the number 4 pick is Diaochan Artful Beauty, and I'm sure someone in the comments is going to tell me I'm pronouncing this name wrong. Okay, whatever. So first things first, we have a commander with a tap ability, and I say it all the time, 1000-year elixir, right? We have 1000-year elixir, and we can tap our commander right away, especially if that tap ability has no mana, because then we can immediately use it. We don't have to save mana to use it. We tap it right away. Then if we do have a 1 mana open, we can untap and then use it again. You really can use this commander in a very political way. Tap, destroy target creature of your choice, then destroy target creature of an opponent's choice. Activate this ability only during your turn before attackers are declared. So we got to make sure that we do it on our turn before attackers are declared. So basically on our first main phase, although I suppose we could do it on our upkeep. So first things first, people are going to say, oh, well, you're going to destroy one of your opponent's creatures and then they're just going to destroy your Diaochan. Correct. That is what they're going to do. So we got to give it Shroud. Lightning Greaves got to go in the deck, okay? And the reason why we have to give it Shroud, Hexproof is not going to work here, okay? Because you're going to destroy target creature, okay? Then destroy target creature of an opponent's choice. So your opponent is going to choose a creature and they're going to say, hey, I want to kill your Diaochan. And that's your ability and you're targeting it, right? You're going to destroy target creature. So if you give your Diaochan Hexproof, you can still target it. That's what hexproof does, right? It allows you to target things. That's your ability and you're targeting it. So you got to give it shroud so it can't be targeted at all. Okay, so that's a really important distinction here. Dark steel plate is obviously the best way to go. Really, this is what you want. You want a dark steel plate. You want to stick it on your Diaochan so that now it's indestructible because this is a destroy ability and you can just sit there and go nuts. And if your opponent targets your Diaochan, it's going to do nothing. Obviously, you're not going to want a lot of creatures in this deck because your opponents are going to start picking them all off as well. Maybe Diachan's the only creature you want in play at any given time. Protection from red will also work because this is a red ability and you can't target something that has protection from that color. Sword of Sinew and Steel. I mean, there's not a ton of effects like this, but Sword of Sinew and Steel we can put on our Diaochan and now it can't be targeted by red abilities. So that works. Hammer of Nazan is another great one, obviously, right? We play it, comes into play, immediately equips, makes our commander indestructible. You're just going to want lots of stuff like that. You're also going to want stuff like Shadow Spear, right? We are destroying again, so we want to make sure our opponents aren't going to be protected from that. So Shadow Spear is great for making your opponent's stuff so that it is targetable and so it is also not indestructible so we can get it off the table. Tyrite Sanctum, I really like that card. You know, it was in my 30 utility lands list for a reason because it can be used in situations like this where you have a commander that you really want to make it so that it doesn't get removed. Okay, it's going to be a little slow. We're going to have to tap it, put a counter on our Diaochan, and then the next turn we sacrifice it now that our commander is a god and make it indestructible. So that also works in this scenario. And I thought if we're going with the my creatures are indestructible sort of theme, let's throw in some other ones. So Creepy Doll, Hazaret, those are both indestructible creatures, right? Like I said, we don't want a bunch of creatures. Our opponents are just going to be picking them off. If our creatures are indestructible, then we're okay. So if we have Hazaret or Creepy Doll in play, they're both indestructible, so our opponents picking them isn't going to do anything. And also they have usable abilities that we can use. I mean, Creepy Doll makes a great blocker, and we are probably going to be getting attacked a lot with this deck. And then, of course, Stuffy Doll and Brash Taunter. And since we're going with that theme, okay, so now we have Stuffy Doll and Brash Taunter in the deck because they're indestructible. And there's also another theme here, right, that works with Stuffy Doll and Brash Taunter. So now you can sort of turn this deck, you know, as a secondary strategy, you can sort of turn this deck into a Stuffy Doll type of deck because you have these cards and because all of your other creatures are going to be indestructible and your commander is going to be indestructible. Now you can just start board wiping like crazy, Blasphemous Act and the like, right? You can even throw Teralf in this deck for that reason because you're going to be doing a lot of that stuff. I think that makes for a pretty formidable deck. And also, again, people are going to be like, what's the win con? How do you win with this deck? Stuffy Doll and Brash Taunter, right? Those are kind of going to be the win cons, I think, for the deck. You might even want to throw Pariah Shield in there too for that reason, right? And chuck Pariah Shield on one of those creatures so that all the damage that gets dealt to you then gets dealt to them, which then gets dealt to another player. So you could even go that route. You can go a little more political with this, right? You can put Humble Defector in there. You can put Stark of Wrath in there, which is very similar to a Diaochan and what it's doing. If you want to go that route, you know, you can do that. I like my first take here where I make my commander indestructible. I start killing my opponent's creatures, or even better, I give it Shroud, and now my opponents can't target it, so they have to target another opponent's creatures. Or maybe they're going to anyway, right? Maybe you're going to kill a creature, and then your opponent's going, okay, well, there's a Shieldred on the table, and I really need to get rid of that. So now you're giving them the opportunity to get rid of it. It can be a real advantage that way. So really interesting deck, really interesting build around. But moving on, coming in at number 3, Kels Fight Fixer with 153 votes. So I assume that means there's going to be 153 people out there that are going to build this deck. I don't know, maybe not. So Kels Fight Fixer is an interesting one. A newer card, you know, I'm trying to keep these polls, you know, the list of commanders, a combination of older cards, newer cards, combination of colors. You know, I don't want to be doing all the same colors and stuff like that. I'm trying to mix it up as much as I can. So Kels Fight Fixer, really thought it would be a little more popular than it was. I just thought that ability of, you know, whenever you sacrifice a creature, you get to draw a card. I mean, it says draw a card on it, right? So right away, any commander that has a draw a card on it tends to be more popular. I mean, it's got 251 decks on EDH Rec right now, so I guess that's okay. I mean, it's definitely not. I was going to say it's in the middle, but it's not in the middle. That's actually lower down. It's rank 476, so that's quite a bit down there, which is kind of surprising. You know, blue and black are popular colors that people really like. It's really surprising, and maybe it's because people just didn't figure out what they should be doing with it. Although sacrificing a creature, that seems pretty obvious too. So I don't know. I'm not sure what it is about Kels that sort of turned people off of it. Maybe it's just, I think there's an issue with the jumpstart cards where they didn't print enough or something like that, I had heard. So I'm not sure. Maybe that has something to do with it. Anyway, clearly there's 153 people sitting out there with maybe a Kels and they want to know what to do with it. So here we go. Nadir Kraken and Chasm Skulker are the best cards in this deck, probably. I mean, Nadir Kraken's probably the best because every time we draw a card, we can pay one and make a tentacle token that we can then sacrifice, right? Assuming we have the mana, we can sacrifice it and pay one and draw another card and then pay one, make another, you know, and on and we go. And our Nadir Kraken keeps getting +1/+1 counters on it. Probably the best card, you know, for just a synergistic matchup with Kels. Chasm Skulker, similar. You're not getting the tokens right away though, but every time you draw a card, you're getting a counter on it, which will then become a token. And you can sacrifice the Chasm Skulker to get the tokens if you want to go off, as it were. Phyrexian Altar is probably, again, another just really, really fantastic card in the deck. I actually don't think I would put Ashnod's Altar in this deck. I think Phyrexian Altar is the way to go because you have to pay blue-black if you do, right? Draw a card. And I just don't think Ashnod's Altar is going to help us that much here. I really like Phyrexian Altar, though, because it can pay that hybrid blue-black mana. So we can sacrifice one of our tentacle tokens to get the mana and then pay it with the Phyrexian Altar and then pay one. And now all we need is one extra mana. So for every one mana we have, we can now draw a card and make our Nadir Kraken bigger. So Phyrexian Altar, I think, is perfect in this deck. I don't think I would go with Ashnod's Altar, though. Obviously, we're going to want Dictate of Erebos, Grave Pact, cards like that. We're in a sacrifice theme here, right? This is a great way to keep your opponent's creatures off the board. Tegrid, I mean, people don't like that card, but man, it's going to be fantastic in this deck. Eradicator Valkyrie, I also really like in this deck, which is sort of a mini Grave Pact in a way. We also want other sack outlets, right? We do need sack outlets in this deck. Our commander is a sack outlet, and I really like that she can protect herself by making herself indestructible, which is great. I always love when commanders have removal protection, so we don't have to be casting them all the time, especially when our deck relies on them a lot. But we do need other sack outlets. I also have Yawgmoth and Carrion Feeder, right? Fantastic sack outlets, drawing us more cards. Carrion Feeder is going to get huge. We do actually need to, you know, attack and close out the game. I would imagine that's probably how we're going to win with this deck is we get a huge Chasm Skulker or a huge Carrion Feeder and just start smashing our opponents with this. Bloodghast and Reassembling Skeleton. Again, we want creatures that we can just keep recurring. We're not always going to have token makers, so it's nice to have a card like Bloodghast or Reassembling Skeleton around that we can get back from the graveyard, so then if we need to draw a card or something or some other sacrifice effect, we can use them for. And there's lots of cards that want to be sacrificed, right? Reef Worm and Aura Thief are both cards that we have lots of sack outlets, so why not we put them in there? Reef Worm's just going to keep getting bigger and bigger. Aura Thief's a really interesting one. Probably should give that a mention in my 10 cards video. It's a great answer in blue for dealing with enchantments, right? When it dies, you just gain control of all enchantments. That's pretty darn good. Obviously, Blood Artist, Zulaport Cutthroat, right? Again, to me, this deck seems like it seems like a fairly easy build around. Like it's an aristocrat style, so obviously you're going to want stuff like this. Again, this is another win con, sort of. We're draining our opponents with these. I actually think Zulaport Cutthroat is better here because Blood Artist cares about when everyone's creatures are dying, which is going to happen a lot anyway. But Zulaport Cutthroat, we're going to be sacrificing our creatures a lot, so maybe that's better because it's going to hit all of our opponents. Pitiless Plunderer, Pawn of Ulamog, right? Again, these are cards that are just auto-includes in decks like this. They're going to be fantastic. Pawn of Ulamog is going to be giving us more token creatures that we can then sacrifice. Pitiless Plunderer, again, just like with the Phyrexian Altar, we get into a situation where a creature dies, we get a treasure token, and we can use that treasure token to pay the draw effect on Kels. So that's going to be fantastic in the deck too. We can get into some loops there even. Smothering Abomination and Priest of Forgotten Gods are both fantastic in the deck. Smothering Abomination is a sack outlet sort of, but more importantly, it's giving us that draw every time we sacrifice a creature, which is fantastic in this deck. I just love Priest of the Forgotten Gods. It's sort of a Grave Pact and a ritual and just a whole bunch of things all in one. And then, of course, we got to put Endrixar and Nadir in here. Endrixar is going to make us a ton of tokens that we can use to sacrifice. Nadir, I must have put this guy in like 7 or 8 decks at least, maybe 10 decks already. I keep saying it. I just think he's so versatile because he's dealing with tokens. He likes that you're sacrificing tokens. He's putting counters on himself. He's dying and then giving you more tokens. He's just doing so much that I just think he goes in so many decks. Blood Funnel is a really interesting card. You know, if you don't want to be doing the same old thing with your aristocrat style deck, this is an interesting one, right? 2 mana enchantment. Non-creature spells you play cost 2 less to play. So that's fantastic. So all your non-creature spells are going to be 2 cheaper. But whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you counter it unless you sacrifice a creature. So this can be dangerous. You got to be careful with this, right? Because if you don't have a creature out to sacrifice, all of your non-creature spells are just going to get countered. So you got to make sure you have them. It's just an interesting way to go. You know, make my damnation cost black. I mean, that seems pretty good. You're probably going to have lots of creatures all the time that you can be sacrificing. So I don't think you're going to get stuck here. This doesn't affect your creatures at all. You can cast creatures all day long. There's lots of creatures in this deck. It can be dangerous. I'm just throwing it out there if you want to give it a try. And then Iridescent Drake is just fantastic in this deck. It combos with Kaya's Ghost form, essentially, right? There's a few cards it can combo with. So your Iridescent Drake enters the battlefield and you put target Aura card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control attached to it. So you got a Kaya's Ghost form in your graveyard because it was there earlier. Or you can just cast it and put it on your Iridescent Drake after the fact. But let's say you had it in play on your commander died, or some other creature you sacrificed, it goes to the graveyard. Iridescent Drake comes into play, you put the Kaya's Ghost form on it. Now you essentially have an infinite sack loop, right? So you can sack your Iridescent Drake to some effect. Let's say your Phyrexian Altar. It dies. Kaya's Ghost form and it both go to the graveyard. The Kaya's Ghost form ability triggers. Iridescent Drake comes back into play. Then the Iridescent Drake will trigger and put the Kaya's Ghost form back into play on it, and rinse and repeat. And then the 1 mana that you're using from the Phyrexian Altar, you can use with Kels' ability to draw cards. You can draw your whole deck with this, right? If you have a Chasm Skulker in play, that Chasm Skulker is going to be enormous and you can one-shot. Like, there's just a lot of ways, obviously, that you can use drawing your whole deck to your advantage. Minions Return is another card that can do that. There are a few cards like this that can combo with it. Kaya's Ghost form and Minions Return are still great in the deck because we can put them on our other creatures that then get sacrificed and come back. But we have to be careful not going overloading with that strategy because we might get stuck with our Iridescent Drake and we don't have anything else to go with it. So it just becomes a really bad creature in our deck. However, it is, you know, it's essentially a sort of a win con. I got a Blood Artist and I can just drain everyone to death, or I can draw my whole deck. There's a lot of ways you can win with that, obviously. But that is it for Kels' Fight Fixer. I think there's a lot there you can go with, obviously. And coming in at number 2, VHati il-Dal with 154 votes, barely beat out Kels. And VHati has a very interesting ability here, right? He's 2 black and a green for anyone who hasn't seen him before. He's a 3/3, and you tap him. Target creature's power or toughness becomes 1 until end of turn. Very unique ability. Anyone who knows the lore and the story behind VHati, there's a reason why he has that particular ability. But anyway, what you want to do here, like obviously turning a creature's power into 1, that can be good. Sure, your opponent's attacking you with a Blightsteel Colossus, and it's only going to hit you for 1. That's pretty darn good. You know, it's definitely usable. The way you want to go, the more powerful way you want to build this deck, though, is by making all your opponent's creatures' toughness into 1, because that makes them a lot easier to kill. And just like the guy who commented on my last video, a guy commented, I have a VHati il-Dal deck, and you really don't want to build it a -1/-1 counters deck. There's better ways to go, and I agree with him. I wouldn't go that way. Hapatra sort of has cornered the market on black and green -1/-1 counters, right? So I don't want to build just another -1/-1 counters deck. You could do that. You could just, I put -1/-1 counters around my opponent's creatures, then I make their toughness into 1, and then, you know, the -1/-1 counter essentially kills them, right? That's a way you could go. I don't want to go that way. So first off, our commander has a tap ability, right? So 1,000-Year Elixir, obviously, we want to be able to use it right away. We want to be able to use it twice. Lightning Greaves, we get to use it right away. Instill Energy is a really interesting one. Really old card. Can go on a lot of decks. 1 mana enchantment aura. Enchanted creature has haste. So again, we can pay 1, put it on our VHati, and right away use his ability. And then also we can pay 0, right? Another one of these 0 mana abilities. Untap enchanted creature. Activate only during your turn and only once each turn. This is very similar to Thousand Year Elixir, but in green, and it's an aura. And then I thought, you know what? Karvek the Spiteful and Knight of Souls Betrayal, why not? Why don't we just make all creatures get -1/-1, right? Now, basically, our commander just becomes tap, destroy target creature. These effects, they're going to affect our creatures too, but okay. I literally just made a deck like this for my patron. It's a Kresh deck, and I thought, why not just hate on small creatures? And that's sort of the direction I went here. We just hate on all the small creatures, and then any of the big creatures our commander will end up killing, right? Screams from Within is fantastic in the deck because we could just keep reusing it. Pestilence, obviously, is fantastic. Again, that's just another way we can just pay 1, deal 1 damage to all the creatures, and anything that we give a 1 toughness to will just die. Culling Ritual from the new set, I think also works with this strategy, right? So you can definitely put that card in the deck. And since we're not going to have a lot of small creatures, I thought Heartless Summoning. I talked about this in my Name is One deck. It really is, if you have a deck that the -1/-1 isn't going to hurt you, all your creature spells cost 2 less to cast. That's pretty good. Our commander is just going to cost a black and a green. Pretty fantastic. And the -1/-1 we don't care about. Okay, our commander's a 2/2 instead of a 3/3. Big deal. Griswold's going to be fantastic in this deck. Chevelle is going to be fantastic in this deck. We have the -1/-1 sort of theme, so Griswold's just going to get huge because all of those tokens are immediately going to die. Chevelle basically just becomes any creature that we plan on killing anyway. We're just going to draw a card and gain life off of. Seraph is another one. If we're going to be destroying our opponent's stuff all over the place, I think Seraph is a great fit in the deck as well. Blood Artist, Poison Tip Archer. Again, this is a situation where Blood Artist is better. I don't think I would put Zulaport Cutthroat in this deck because our creatures aren't really dying that much. Blood Artist is what you want to go with in a deck like this. Vulturous Zombie, man, this is going to be a fantastic one. Here's a card that I just never see in a commander game that really could go in a lot, right? Whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Pretty fantastic. We're going to be killing our opponent's creatures all over the place, so this guy's going to get pretty huge pretty quick, and he's got flying. But the real killers in this deck, Thornbite Staff, 2 mana, equipment. Equipped creature has pay 2, tap this creature deals 1 damage to target creature or player. Okay, which we're never going to want to do that because his other ability is so much better. But it also has whenever a creature dies, untap this creature. Okay, this card really goes nuts with a lot of different creatures. It's sort of a very combo-y card because of that untap ability. So we put this on our commander, okay, and we have Knight of Souls Betrayal in play. We just kill everything in play, right? This just becomes, I target my opponent's creature, its toughness becomes 1, it dies to Knight of Souls Betrayal, then my commander untaps, and I move on to the next one. And then the next one, this just becomes, I wipe everyone's creatures off the board. Pretty fantastic. And then if I have Seraph or Vulturous Zombie in play, they're going to get huge, right? And then if that wasn't mean enough, Tree of Perdition, 3 and a black, plant 013 with Defender. I'm sure everyone's probably seen this card before in a commander game because it has a very powerful ability. It taps to exchange target opponent's life total with Tree of Perdition's toughness. So just in a normal play, if their life total's 40, you basically just tap this to make them lose, 27 life? Not bad. And then you have an 040 blocker. But in this deck, it's really mean because what we can do is we tap our VHati to make our Tree of Perdition have a toughness of 1. Then we tap our Tree of Perdition to make an opponent's life total 1. Ouch. And you can keep doing this, right? Your Tree of Perdition is going to have a toughness of 40, but you can make its toughness 1 until end of turn and make the next opponent's life into 1 and so on and so forth. You're going to become the arch enemy as soon as these 2 cards are in play, I imagine, but it's definitely a way to close out the game. So that is pretty much it for VHati il-Dal. And the winner is, with a whopping 170 votes, Nevinyrral Urborg Tyrant. I was actually kind of surprised that this is the one that came out on top. I'm also kind of surprised it's not more popular. I almost didn't put this in the poll because I had a few people request it, right? That's where the poll came from. And all of these commanders were ones that people had requested. And Nevinyrral, I had it requested a few times. Really surprised it's not more popular. When I first saw him, I thought he was a pretty obvious build around, to be quite honest. You are going to be board wiping a lot, and people don't really like that. So I thought that's why he wasn't that popular. That's why I didn't make a Nevinyrral deck. However, given the amount of people that have requested him, and given the fact that he won this poll, maybe people just don't know how to play him, okay? So he's 6 mana, 3 white, blue, black. So right away, I'm thinking, okay, 6 mana, I don't want to cast him more than once. You know, I don't want to be casting him a lot. I want to cast him once, and that's it. So he's a 3/6, that's pretty good. He's a zombie wizard, that's important. Those are two very popular creature types. He has hexproof from artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. And obviously, that's a flavor thing, right? As we all know, Nevinyrral's Disc, right? Which is, of course, gotta be in the deck. You gotta have it, or that's a huge flavor fail. It does work, too. Having hexproof from creatures is not bad. Having hexproof from artifacts, you know, there's definitely some situations where that can be useful. I tried to think of how I could build around that ability, and there really isn't much. And I didn't want to get too far away from what we were already doing. The other two abilities are so much more important, right? When Nevinyrral Urborg Tyrant enters the battlefield, create a tapped 2/2 black zombie creature token for each creature that died this turn. However, given that he cost 6 mana and cast a Wrath of God and then cast my Nevinyrral right afterwards and I get a bunch of zombie tokens, but now that's 10 mana, that I don't think that's going to be happening a lot. However, if you want, you can put Planar Collapse in the deck. Okay, Planar Collapse is sort of a free board wipe. 2 mana enchantment at the beginning of your upkeep. If there are 4 or more creatures on the battlefield, you sacrifice Planar Collapse and it destroys all creatures. So basically what this becomes is a free board wipe on your turn, right? So you can have Planar Collapse in play on your upkeep, assuming there's lots of creatures in play. You sacrifice it, it destroys everything. Now you don't have to pay for that board wipe, right? It's a free board wipe. Then I cast my Nevinyrral and I get a whole bunch of zombie tokens. That's in the deck. You can go that way. So Nevinyrral's last ability, though, is probably the most important one, right? It's basically a Nevinyrral's Disc. When Nevinyrral dies, you may pay 1. When you do, destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. Wow. So obviously, removal's not going to be an issue here, right? I actually put a lot less removal in this deck than I normally would. I do have some exile stuff, though, right? I got Vanishing Verse, I got D-Spark, right? There are going to be maybe some indestructible things that we're going to have to get off the board, so we got to make sure we do have a few effects like that. But definitely a lot less removal than I normally would put in a deck. So what are we going to do with this deck? Well, what you want to do is you want to use that second and third ability in unison, right? You want to use both to your advantage, where my Nevinyrral is going to die. I'm going to pay the 1. I'm going to destroy everything. Then I want my Nevinyrral to come back into play so that I can get a zombie token for everything that just died. And the best way to do that is with cards like Supernatural Stamina and Abnormal Endurance. Whenever this creature dies, basically you put it back into play under its owner's control. So we're going to want to play our Nevinyrral. Always leave 1 mana open. Always, okay? If you don't leave that 1 mana open, your Nevinyrral is dead. Your opponents are just going to be waiting to remove it. Because you don't have the 1 mana open, they don't have to worry about the board wipe. So you got to leave that 1 mana open. And what's going to happen is our Nevinyrral dies. Maybe he dies by some other means, or maybe we sacrifice him. Obviously, we're going to have a lot of sacrifice outlets in this deck. And then we cast Supernatural Stamina or Abnormal Endurance, and we wipe the board, right? We have to stack the triggers, obviously, appropriately. We pay the 1, we destroy everything. Then our Abnormal Endurance will resolve. Our Nevinyrral will come back into play, and we have our Nevinyrral back again, so we can sort of do the repeat thing, the rinse and repeat again. And then we also get the zombie tokens on top of it. That's the win con for the deck as well. I think destroying everyone's creatures, artifacts, and enchantments is really going to hose people enough so that it's going to be pretty hard for them to win. So it's not like we got to win this game fast, right? We're going to be making a zombie army that we can then attack our opponents with. That's pretty much it. Lots of effects like Athreos, Gift of Immortality, right? These effects, same thing. Athreos is great because he's indestructible, and we can just put that coin counter on our Nevinyrral so that when he dies, he just comes right back. This time it's not even going to cost us mana. Gift of Immortality, same thing. He's going to die, immediately come back, and then our Gift of Immortality will come back attached to him. Fantastic card in the deck. I mean, there's so many. Malakir Rebirth, Kaya's Ghost Form. There's tons of effects that do stuff like this. I'm not even going to mention them all. Also, our opponent's stuff is going to be dying all the time as well. So Thrilling Encore and Grim Return are going to be fantastic in the deck. Grim Return, we can choose target creature card in a graveyard that was put there from the battlefield of this turn. So any of our opponent's creatures that we want, we can just pay 3 mana and put it onto the battlefield under our control. Thrilling Encore is just going to give us everything. This is a card that, man, when I saw it, I'm just like, this is busted. You just sit there with it in your hand, and as soon as someone casts a board wipe, you just put onto the battlefield, and you control all creature cards and all graveyards that were put there from the battlefield this turn. It's sort of like a mini Rise of the Dark Realms. Fantastic in this deck, right? Again, we're going to wait for the right moment to use it. Golden Guardian's an interesting one because we can use its ability if we know we're going to wipe the board with our Nevinyrral, right? We can pay the 2 for that ability, and it's going to fight another target creature you control. We can fight anyone. We can fight our Nevinyrral if we want. Neither of them are going to die, but we're going to wipe the board. So when Golden Guardian dies this turn, you return it to the battlefield transformed under your control, right? And it's a pretty sweet land that taps for 2 mana and can also make Golem tokens. I got some other stuff that wants to be dying. Hellvault and Ugin's Nexus, right? These guys are both going to get destroyed. Hellvault's good because we can pay 1 to exile target creature we control. If we have a creature on board that we want to save from a Nevinyrral, we pay 1, we exile it, then we wipe the board with Nevinyrral, right? We can do it a bunch of times. We can exile a bunch of our creatures, and then when Nevinyrral dies, he's going to destroy our Hellvault. And when Hellvault is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, we return all cards exiled with it. So we get all of our creatures back. Ugin's Nexus, I mean, player would take an extra turn, they skip it. That's pretty good. And also when it gets destroyed, we get to take an extra turn. So that fits great. I got Induced Amnesia and Hatching Plans, 2 more enchantments that are going to get destroyed by Nevinyrral that we want to be destroyed. Hatching Plans is going to draw us 3 cards. Nothing wrong with that. And Induced Amnesia I really like. When it enters the battlefield, target player exiles all the cards from their hand face down, then draws that many cards. So it's sort of like a mini wheel for one person. That's going to be you. You're going to pick yourself. And then when it's put into the graveyard from the battlefield, you return the exiled cards to your owner's hand. So what this can be, if you got, say, 5 cards in your hand, you cast this, it comes into play, you exile those 5 cards and you draw 5 cards. Then when Nevinyrral wipes the board, this goes into the graveyard and those 5 cards you exiled go back to your hand. So it basically becomes 3 mana, draw 5 cards. Pretty fantastic. I got Yahenni and Bontu, the Glorified, right? We want some indestructible creatures that are actually going to survive all the board wipes we're going to be doing, right? Yahenni is going to be fantastic. He's just going to get enormous. He's also a sack outlet that we can use for a Nevinyrral. Bontu's just going to sit there, 4/6 menace. He doesn't care about all those board wipes. We can also use him as a sack outlet if we need to. Can't attack or block unless a creature died under your control this turn. Yeah, I don't think that's going to be a problem. Scarab God, same thing. Scarab God, we're going to keep getting it back. I don't love that we have to keep recasting it. However, it does have that sort of protection clause that we can keep getting it back. That other ability of exiling target creature card from a graveyard and making a copy of it is also pretty fantastic. But mainly I put it in for that first ability. At the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses X life and you scry X, where X is the number of zombies you control. Our commander's a zombie, so we're guaranteed to have at least 1. We're probably going to have a bunch more. So again, this can just be a win con. We just drain our opponent's life 6 or 7 or 10 every turn. Diagraph Captain, same thing. Whenever another zombie you control dies, target opponent loses a life, so it can sort of be a blood artist effect there, and it also pumps up our team. And then, you know, I don't love Planeswalkers, but Nevinyrral doesn't kill Planeswalkers. You really could just make a Super Friends Nevinyrral deck. One of the reasons I don't love Planeswalkers is because they weren't included in the rules of the game for many, many years, so cards like Nevinyrral's Disc don't hit them. So you sort of are skirting the rules or getting around the rules a little bit there. And Nevinyrral, same thing. You really could just build a pretty good Super Friends deck with Nevinyrral, I think. I don't love them, but I did throw a few in here. I got Liliana's, you know, Liliana, Dreadhorde General, and Liliana Death's Majesty. Liliana's really like stuff dying all the time. I mean, Dreadhorde General is just ridiculous in a commander game. Whenever a creature you control dies, draw a card. That's any creature, including tokens. Pretty great. The -4 is also pretty great. Each player sacrifices 2 creatures. Hey, we don't mind if we sacrifice our creatures, right? I thought Death's Majesty was also really good. It's going to be making us zombie tokens, which is great. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. We can use that for our commander, right? If our commander goes to the graveyard and we don't have any of those slingshot effects, we can get it back this way. That ultimate's also pretty good, right? Destroy all zombie creatures also works fantastically in this deck. And then I got Elspeth, Knight Errant, and Kaya, Ghost Assassin. I just think Kaya, Ghost Assassin's fantastic. Again, we can use it to save a creature from the board wipes if we want. Elspeth's Knight Errant, I mostly put this in there for the ultimate. For the rest of the game, artifacts, creatures, enchantments, and lands you control are indestructible. Gee, I wonder if that's going to work good in this deck. If we can get that off, I mean, now all of our stuff's indestructible and we can just keep wiping the board over and over, and there's no way we can lose at that point. And some sack outlets, Phyrexian Tower and High Market, make sure you got those in your Nevinyrral deck, right? Because we do want free sack outlets, right? We got to save 1 mana to use Nevinyrral's ability, so we want to make sure that we have sack outlets that don't cost mana. So those are definitely in there as well. And, you know, as I said, I have a deck list for this deck. It is in the description below. And also in the description below is the poll for the next video, right? This is how it's going to work. For anyone who doesn't know, every video is going to have a poll. Then you can vote on that poll, which is going to be for the next video. And it's going to continue on like that. And again, in this video, comment however you like. Loved the video, hated it, you suck, please stop building decks, whatever your comment might be, you know, I can take it. But also, here's the commander I want to see, right? I guess if you think I suck at building decks, you probably won't recommend any commanders for me to put in polls. But anyway, add that to, you know, or just comment, here's the commander I want to see, and I will put those commanders in the next poll. And, you know, don't be disheartened if your commander wasn't chosen. You know, I can't read them all. I think there's over 500 comments on that video. I can't read them all. And also, if your commander didn't get voted for, didn't win the poll, I'm going to save the polls and I will start reusing them, okay? So as we progress, this series is going to go on for, who knows, maybe forever. So as we progress, I will have those older polls and I will reuse some of those commanders that haven't been chosen, so have no fear. I'm going to eventually reuse them in polls as we progress. You know, there is a limited amount of commanders in the game, so, you know, eventually maybe I'll get to all of them. Who knows? But that is it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks for tuning in.